Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Matt Nathanson from IslandTimeLiving.com, leading entrepreneurs to lifestyle freedom. And today, I want to talk to you about getting rid of fear and edgework. And you might be asking, Matt, what in the hell does getting rid of my fears and doing edgework have to do with online self-employment? And the answer is absolutely everything, because mindset is so incredibly important when you're self-employed, because you're at the top of the pyramid, so to speak. You got no one to rely on unless you've hired coaches and guides, and it can be a lonely place at the top. And so self-discovery is super duper important. And a book I'm reading right now is called Edgework, and it's written by Dr. Ronald Peters. I recommend checking it out. And there are exercises in this book. It's predominantly designed to help people who have chronic health issues. So if you know someone who has health issues, tell them about Edgework by Dr. Ronald Peters. But the exercises can help absolutely anybody, because it's about healing our inner child kind of stuff. And the exercises, or I guess it's one exercise with multiple steps, that I went through today took about 2 hours, but I want to share what I came up with and the process with you so that you might be able to integrate the same thing into your own life and to fix your own fears and heal your own inner child. So the first part was to write down all of my fears, and I went on to the second page, and I'll read you some of them. One of my fears is that I'll never be free of physical pain, and chronic pain and health issues have been a thing for me for 13 years. I'm afraid that we're going to run out of money and have to sell our home. I'm afraid that my wife is going to fall out of love with me and leave me at some point. I'm afraid that I'm going to damage our kids emotionally by not being able to control my own emotions. I'm afraid the economy is going to crash. You know, one of the things, actually the main thing that got me looking into making money online was the central banks printing money and slamming interest rates down as a way to boost the economy when it didn't fix anything. So I'm really afraid of the next recession that's coming. I think it's going to be the worst one in my lifetime by far. I'm afraid of spending too much money and not having enough extra money, which I think is pretty normal fear, right? I'm afraid that my kids are afraid of me. You know, I grew up in a family that hit, spanked, and yelled, you know, and it was normal. It's the way that their parents did it, and the way that their parents did it, and the way that their parents did it. But I've realized that you know, ruling the house through fear is a total mistake, because if my children should be able to rely on absolutely anyone, it's me and mom, and they shouldn't be afraid of me. That's super destructive, and I'm trying to heal that stuff from my own childhood. I wrote down that I'm afraid of not having enough time in each day, right? Not enough time, not enough money, the two universal fears. One of them was I'm afraid of having regrets and looking back on life when I'm on my deathbed to say, man, I wish I would have done that, or I wish I would have spent more energy toward that. You know what? I'm afraid of my hair growing gray and my eyesight getting worse. I don't know if you can see, I just started to get gray hairs like within the last 18 months, and I'm so bummed. And my eyesight in the last 18 months has started to get blurry, and I'm super bummed about that too, because I've had glasses twice in my life, and both times my eyes got better and I got to stop wearing glasses, but it doesn't look like that's happening this time, so that scares me. I wrote down that I'm afraid of being lonely and the fact that I really don't have very many close friends. You know, and I do. I think I've got at least 3 or 4 or 5 good friends I could call no matter what's going on and dump my stuff, and they would help set me on the right course in the right direction. But, you know, when we're younger and we're in school, we generally have lots of friends, and only 3, 4, or 5 makes me feel lonely compared to the number of friends that I used to have. I'm scared that life is going to pass me by because of my health issues. Being upright for long periods of time is painful for me, and so is sitting. So traveling, going to movies, all that kind of stuff that most people take for granted hasn't been part of our life experience so far, and I'm afraid that those things won't be. I'm afraid of losing what I have and not getting what I want. And I think those are the 2 largest universal fears, right? And then the author, Ronald Peters, in the book Edgework, he then says, all of the things, all of the fears that I listed are unconsciously drawing those things toward me because I have them vibrationally in me that I'm sending outward, and the law of attraction brings that stuff to me. So by putting them down on paper, I can see what I am unconsciously drawing toward me. Then he asks for the reader to take a look at their society-based fears. And one of mine is that the dad must be the patriarch of the home or else it's lawlessness. And that's how it was in my house growing up, and I don't believe that to be true. I don't know if it's a democracy necessarily, because the kids, they don't know as much about life as their mom and as I do. But it's not a patriarchy or a matriarchy. It's different than that these days. The need for instant gratification is a societal fear that I have. Or how about taking time off and away from work means that I'm lazy? That's probably an American thing. But, I wish that we were like Spain, where everybody shut down at 1 o'clock and took a siesta for an hour. I think that as a society, we'd be a lot happier. And then another societal-based fear that I have is the necessity to have good credit. Because if I have good credit, that means that I'm a worthy human being, which is pretty silly. It makes it easy to get a loan, but it doesn't have anything to do with my worthiness. The fears, then he asks in step 2, again, to come up with the fears that I notice throughout the day and to write them down. And I'm afraid to turn leadership over to my children. They're 8 years old and 5 years old, but still turning leadership over to them and allowing them to feel empowered and like they're able to direct their own lives is a beautiful thing, and it strengthens them in the long run while it affects my ego in the short run. So I was really glad to see that on paper. I'm afraid of not getting back to people quickly enough when they email me or leave a voicemail. I'm afraid that's going to damage my reputation and my credibility, which is pretty silly. I normally get back to people within an hour or two, and I think within 24 hours is totally realistic. I'm afraid that if I take the day off, that I'm not going to achieve my goals. I'm going to touch the screen so the phone doesn't shut off. And I'm taking the day off today, but still working. I'm still filming this video. But I saw a healthcare practitioner yesterday, and I'm a little beat up from it. And so I cleared my calendar and took the day off to recover. But subconsciously, my ego still tells me that means that I'm lazy and that I'm not going to achieve my long-term goals. And I know that that's BS. And then another fear that comes up for me throughout the day is not effectively being able to manage my kids when they fight and argue with each other. It usually brings up anger within me, and I yell. And that's something that I definitely would like to remedy, because again, it makes my kids afraid when I yell, and the last thing in the world that I want is for them to be afraid of me. And what does this have to do with online self-employment? Everything, you guys. Because all of the things that I'm mentioning affect my self-esteem. And if my self-esteem is hurting, then everything I set out to do will be affected by that. Including working. So that's why we're doing this. The fears that I have that help me, that's another thing that Dr. Peters asks readers to identify, the fears that help you. Fear of overdoing it physically and then needing lots of time to recover is something that helps me. It does keep me from overdoing it. And paying bills on time is another fear that I've got. My family all had good credit growing up. I was taught the value of money, how to manage money when I was little. And so I pay my bills on time, and I've got good credit to show for it, and that's a beautiful thing. The fourth part of this is to identify how each one of my fears is my teacher, how each one of your fears is your teacher. And my fear of living with pain has taught me to examine my mind and to examine my thoughts. And so I've expanded who I am as a human being, and that's a super spiritual thing. And so it's really been my teacher in that way. Fear of not having enough money has taught me how to save. Every time I deposit a check, I move 50% of that deposit over to savings. And 25% of that is going to go towards retirement and that kind of stuff. And the other 25% is going to go toward taxes. So 50% of everything I deposit goes right away over to savings. Fear of losing my wife and of her falling out of love with me has helped me to be less selfish and less self-centered, and to think about other people. And the same goes for the fear of messing up my kids emotionally. It's forced me to examine my actions and my thoughts, and that's super important. Fears of the economy crashing have shown me how to be prepared. we've got emergency supplies. And God forbid that happens, we're good for 30 days at least. That includes food and extra toilet paper and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Fear of not having enough time, not having enough time in the day or not having enough time in a lifetime to do the things I want, teaches me to plan ahead. It teaches me to schedule things, to use my calendar, all that kind of stuff. Fear of going gray and losing my eyesight, it teaches me to appreciate the hair that I do have. One of the things that most people don't know is that I put minoxidil on my head every single night before I go to bed. I used to be bald. Well, not bald, but it thinned really badly and came back. And I keep it. That's my metrosexual thing, right? That's what I do is I make sure my hair keeps growing because, hey, I officiate weddings. That's how I trade my time for money. And the people who are shopping for wedding ministers online are girls in their 20s and in their early 30s. And if I look younger and more relatable, I stay busy. And so that's a fear that I have to manage. And losing my eyesight teaches me to appreciate the things that I do see and the wonderful colors that I do see. Fear of loneliness and not having enough friends has taught me self-reliance. And in the process or through the process of self-reliance and figuring out who the hell I am and how I fit into things, it's built up my self-esteem and my confidence. Fear of health issues. Again, they've taught me to seek my own understanding of God and my inner being and spirituality and the law of attraction and all kinds of stuff. All kinds of great things have come from health issues. He then asks the reader to complete some sentences. And one of the sentences is, I was afraid of ... And the first thing that came to my mind, and hopefully this doesn't hurt my dad's feelings, but it said, I was afraid of my dad as a kid. I was afraid of being yelled at or hit, and that he didn't love me. And he loved me very much and still does. And I have a great relationship with my dad. But he parented as a strict authoritarian, and that was the way that his family did it, and that's just what he knew, and I forgive him for that, but it's what comes up for me, and it's programming that I see unconsciously playing itself out in my own family dynamic, and my kids are afraid of me sometimes. I can see it, and that's something that I want to fix. I felt protected when ... is another question the author asks us to ponder. I felt protected when I had football pads on. I played football for 6 years. I wasn't good enough to play college. I wasn't small. I was too small and maybe not good enough too, right? Let's just be real. But when I had football pads on, I was able to express the angers that I had pent up as a kid and all of life's injustices and the things that I thought weren't fair. I felt free when ... I felt free when I was on my bike or on my skateboard, or I can remember when I turned 16 or just being in high school and driving my car and being able to get out of the house. That was just amazing, amazing stuff. I did not feel protected when ... I didn't feel protected when my friendships hit boundaries. That was a tough one, and I can think of a few specific instances with friends where I knew that I'd hit the boundary of our friendship, and that was a tough thing. It was risky for me to ... It was risky for me to question my dad, and I put that in there, and again, I see that I'm doing the same thing with my kids. I try to create a loving environment where they're welcome to question my decisions, but then when I reflect on it, I think of so many knee-jerk responses where I'm like, it's my way, I'm the parent, I'm the dad, I know best, blah, blah, blah. And I hope that we're evolving as people and I'm evolving as a person and as a family, and that's just not the way that it's going to be going forward. If others knew I was afraid ... I wrote down, if others knew I was afraid, then I felt unworthy. Oh, man, what a bunch of garbage. He then says in step number 6 to go back and look at all of the fears that you wrote down and fully feel and experience each one individually. And I closed my eyes and was basically in a meditative state for probably a half hour going through each fear. And I even cried a little bit when some of them came up. But then I was able to settle down and I could literally feel the energy of that fear leaving as I went through each one. So I've purged some of those things that were drawing situations like that to me. Then he asks the reader to list the things that you worry about. And again, not enough time, not enough money. So that was an easy one. Then he asks you to come up with planning and preparation, ways that you're going to mitigate all of these worries. And I wrote down that on the first of every month, which I don't do, I should do, on the first of every month, plan out what needs to be done for the month ahead. Then on either Sunday or Monday, sit down and review everything for the week. And I usually go a couple days, but I don't always go a full week. I need to keep a daily list of priorities, which I do. It's right here. Where is it? So I keep this on my dresser. So when I walk by it, I can see that my daily priorities are meditate and pray, read, exercise. And exercise doesn't always mean exercise for me. It can mean stretching. Get outside, get some sunlight, some vitamin D. It makes a huge deal. Check and respond to emails no more than 3 times a day. Instead of being instantly available when people email, just do it 3 times a day. I need to budget time for writing my wedding ceremonies and then also for internet marketing and doing all that kind of stuff. I need to budget time for appointments with couples to plan their weddings. I got to make sure I have time set aside for my family where I'm not focusing on anything but them. And then I have to make sure that I've got a scheduled day off where I am away from technology. Super important. And I want to make sure that you guys do that for yourselves as well. Schedule time away from your phone and away from your computer. And I set an automatic thing on my email that says, hey, I'm away until tomorrow. Please be patient. I'll get back to you as soon as I can then. And I got to tell you, it makes a huge difference. Another thing I'm going to do as far as planning and preparation to get rid of worry is to check in with my wife regularly. And I do. And I ask her, how am I doing? How are we doing? Is there anything that I can be doing differently and better? Check in with my friends who hold me accountable. And I used to have way more of these friends close to me, but there are still 3, 4, or 5 who I can call and just check in and be like, hey man, this is where I'm struggling. Tell me what you hear when I describe the situation to you. And then listen to their BS and help them through their struggles and worries. And it's a reciprocal thing, and it only strengthens your relationship with those people. I've paid for coaching with the 6-figure mentors, and I need to do a better job of scheduling and being accountable for my regular coaching sessions. Paying down debt each month. We do pay 2 extra mortgage payments every single year because we pay a couple $100 extra every single month. But there's other debt too that needs to be paid down. And I vow right now to pay a little bit extra each payment so that those debts disappear quicker. Review my family's discretionary spending every couple of months. I started using a free program on the internet called Wave. I think it's waveapp.com, and it's just like QuickBooks, but it's free. So if you use QuickBooks and you're paying a bunch for it, you might want to check out Wave. And if you don't currently categorize your income and expenses for the end of the year for taxes, I encourage you to check out Wave. I think it's waveapp or waveapps.com. It's easy to use, and you can link everything up to it, and then it will just categorize everything and have it all done for you. And then I need to set benchmarks toward my income goals. And I've got everything in my head, but you guys, I don't have everything written down as far as what I want to achieve and when. And that's something that I plan on doing this month and getting it done for all of this year. And then step 8, he says, is release all future fears to the universe. And then I put in real big words, that means faith. I am a person of deep, deep faith. I mean, look at these ridiculous tattoos. I got Buddha right there. I have this ridiculous tattoo of Jesus on my arm, right? So I'm a person of faith, but hey, I still experience fear, and I still need to be disciplined in my practice. And, I just got to ramp that stuff up and make sure that I'm not slipping in the things that I've always done. So I hope that this was helpful. The video went longer than I thought it was gonna. 20 minutes is one of my longer videos, but I thought it was worth sharing. I want you guys to see where I'm growing as a human being, and I think that unconsciously gives you permission to do the exact same thing. So check out the book Edgework by Ronald Peters, especially if you have health issues or if you know someone who does. It's geared towards people with health issues, but the exercises in the back are phenomenal for anybody. Be well, you guys. Be well.